Hi, I'm Amy Coots, and I'm an actor, hypnotherapist, and the founder of Acting with Courage Hypnotherapy. And in this series, I will be interviewing some fantastic actors, writers, directors, producers, anyone involved in the creative arts, and I will be asking them how and why they got into their respective careers and the advice that they offer to other creatives to look after their mental health and well-being. Hello and welcome to this episode of Why This. My guest today is Niki Flacks. Niki Flacks' impressive career as a director, actor, teacher and psychologist spans both sides of the Atlantic. Her impressive career as an actor saw her perform with icons such as Maggie Smith, Leonard Nimoy and Henry Winkler on and off Broadway. On TV, she also starred in the very well-known US soap One Life to Live, which is just a small portion of an even more extensive theatre and television CV. Niki founded Acting with Passion, which is a style of acting training that she has taught in cities such as New York, London, Paris, and Berlin. Based on the latest research from the fields of neuroscience and mind-body psychology, it offers a revolutionary new approach to the age-old problems of the actor, dealing with nerves, engaging the body, quieting the inner critic, auditioning, creating character, and even playing comedy. Hello, Niki Flacks. How are you today?
Terrific. Glad to be with you.
Thank you so much for joining me. This is very generous of you to give your time today for me to pick your brains, as it were.
Okay.
So I guess the first question to start all of this is, why acting with passion?
Well, because acting is such a strange thing that we as actors do.
Yes.
You know, we love it, and yet it drives us crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's so universal, that incredible frustration, the horror of the constant voice in the head, that I think, I certainly, for years when I started, thought I was the only one who had that evil voice. And then you find out, my God, everybody has it. But that it's so fraught with, frustration, anxiety, and all that stuff. And yet we want to do it. So acting with passion was really my personal exploration into how to do this thing that I loved and truly enjoy it. I'm so aware as a beginning professional actor that I remembered that everyone I thought who was ever an actor shared this one unique experience. And that was the first time we ever acted. You might have been the fourth angel on the left. And your heart pounded and you said your words. And the audience loved you. And I always think that experience for all of us must be sort of like mainlining heroin, because after that, we all say, I want to do it again. I want more. Yes. And so we go out, we seek more experiences. And then something strange happens. We work with people who are more experienced than we are. Mm-hmm. And then you go and you work with teachers who tell you all the things that you're doing wrong. And that which was joyous becomes effortful. And I felt, where did that joy go? That's what I want. And I felt that feeling, that thing of working too hard and thinking, why? And I realized that I was not alone, that this was something that was, yes, and that I was searching for a way to do this, not only that was joyous and easy, but that one could do it again and again. That frustration, you're in rehearsal, and you have that one rehearsal where, oh my God, it's just everything is perfect. And at the end of that rehearsal, the director says, terrific, Amy, same thing tomorrow. Yeah, we all go, no, I can't possibly do that. And that frustration, well, why can't I do it again and again? I mean, that, and it just, all that sense of not having a way to do it. And I was at the best drama school in the country. Northwestern University at that time was, fabulous. And this great acting teacher. And so it wasn't like I hadn't had training, but in fact, I think the training became part of the problem.
Yep.
Because it was like almost everybody at that time, and even today, almost every actor training has its roots in Stanislavski.
Yes.
He was a genius. I mean, there's no question. The man was a genius, and he had great ideas. And what he said seemed very logical. If you want to feel sad, what do? You remember something sad. Oh my God. I mean, it's so obvious. And immediately you feel something sad. But then I remember in all those acting classes where I would remember when my cat Muffy died. And I'd see little Muffy. And then within a nanosecond, Muffy would disappear. And I would go, okay, Muffy, come back. I have to feel sad. All right, come on, Muffy. Come on. All right, little nose, little whiskers, ears. And that was when some really helpful acting teacher or director would say, you're working too hard. Stop intellectualizing. And the voice in the head would get so loud. Yes, you're doing it again. You're such a loser. You can't act. You don't have any idea what you're doing. I thought, I've got to find another way, because that was such agony. In my search, was very rewarded. It was a remarkable time to be a young actor in New York City.
If you don't mind me asking, what was that time specifically?
It was early 60s.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I did, my first professional job was in 1960 at the Tyrone Guthrie Theater, which was pretty sensational. And there was a revolution in the world of psychology at that time that fascinated me. And it was the mind-body thing that you and your generation, all of you take for granted. Of course, mind-body, we know that. Fields, healing, all of that stuff. It was completely new in the West. I mean, the yogis knew about it 5,000 years ago, but Westerners are slow. So there we were discovering this mind-body thing. And it came from the work of a German psychiatrist, actually, who was a contemporary of Freud's. And he observed the bodies of his patients. And he noticed that they held these tensions in their bodies, and that as he would get them to release those tensions, that they would release feelings. They would weep, they would get angry, and he went, oh my God, there's feelings in the body. And when I read that, I went, wow, because it seemed to me to put one of the pieces of the puzzle together. It wasn't seeing Muffy, it was something else. There's nothing worse than picking up a script and looking at it, and the playwright has said, crying hysterically.
Oh, that's always my nightmare, I have to say.
Spent the whole page before then going, I'm going to cry.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry hysterically. So there was all this stuff happening, and I went and worked with a therapist that had worked with Reich, and I worked with another person who had worked with his American disciple, Alexander Lowen. And what I found, I found that yes, these emotions could be released, but all of these therapists were basically Freudian enough that they were connecting the emotions to memory. So you started to cry. All right, so Amy, let's talk about your father. And then we would be in classic therapy. Also, all of the acting teachers, of course, were doing some variant of that because they had been so influenced by the actor's studio. And all of that stuff that had come out of all of those, Lee Strasberg wanted to be a therapist practically. In fact, and way crossed lines. Anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Sure.
So much of that anyone who was kind of interested as I was in how does this mind-body thing work was then bringing in all this Stanislavski stuff to sort of, and they would, therefore, you would release feelings and then they would say, all right, now let's make them bigger. Let's talk about your father or whatever.
Yeah.
And immediately I could feel a valve shut off because as soon as I was going into memory, I was somewhere else. And that's when I started to experiment with what happens if I don't think about memory at all. I just go with the body and exploring. Wilhelm Reich said that there's all this sadness in the chest, grief, and I would find, yes, oh my God, there's Muffy times 10 there. And all of these things that I began to explore and found that suddenly the acting was easy again. And that voice in the head became so silent because the body was so busy. And it wasn't all this self-talk in the brain. And that's what led me. Finally, it was working so well and I was doing well. I was auditions, everything. And I kept thinking, this is just too good. I have to share it with people. It was too much fun. And so if a friend would call and say, I have an audition coming up, I would say, okay, why don't you just come by my apartment and we'll play? And as I started to play with people and introduce these things to them, everyone said, oh, you've got to teach. And I said, and the reason I said, no, was mostly because of all the damage I had seen from the teachers I had had. And I realized how very destructive all of that method plumbing of history and all that stuff, how dangerously awful it was. And it made us crazy. It was. And again, it was Strasberg, it was Kazan, all of them did versions of this. And in fact, celebrated in a way, the more crazy you were, therefore the more interesting you must be, and what a great actor you would be. And so that they would encourage all this stuff. Anybody intelligent realizes that with the Muffy work, remembering the sad incident, if you are in a Broadway play and you're performing 8 performances a week, well, after the 7th day of seeing Muffy, the brain goes, Muffy, who cares? You know, because we get desensitized. Yeah, we get bored. And the brain gets bored in a 17th of a second visualizing something. So that didn't work. And so then all those clever teachers would then have you embark on your life. You would have a scene that you were working on where you had to be very, very emotional, and it wasn't happening. You'd say, oh, Lee, I can't do this. It's not happening. He would say, Amy, my dear, now, I remember that you told me this in confidence, but you don't mind if I share it with the class, do you? And of course you'd say, oh yeah, surely. What are you going to say? So then he would say, yes, Amy told me that when she was little, her aunt, would lock her in the closet and beat her with a broom. And she would say, yes, it was horrible. And then he would turn to the class, yes, anyone else? Yes, me too. And so they would be crying and telling their stories. Then he would say, Amy, my love, go do your scene. And you'd get up there and, oh my God, you'd be a mess, weeping and carrying on. And he would say, you see, all we do is we just take the raw materials of our lives and we use them.
Nikki, this is amazing because, I mean, there's so much to unpack from what you've said, and I'll get to your technique in a moment, but it's so interesting you say that. And I think, I mean, that story, I sit here going, oh my God, yes, because, and I don't think that's unique in the sense that I've experienced that in a class.
No.
When I was actually emotionally very unwell at that point, and I was exploited by that teacher who thought my acting was unbelievable. But I was actually really in a very fragile personal state that had nothing to do with me being an amazing actor. And I know other actors, and I'm sure you've worked with them too, is that that story is also theirs as well. And it's so interesting when you were talking about, well, I mean, it's all interesting. It's amazing. And I think anyone who's watching is going to get such a delight from this. I wanted to let you know that prior to, well, not even just coming across your work, but the work of Impulse Company,
right?
Fabulous Scott Williams, which I'll talk about in a minute. All that stuff you were talking about with regards to, you get this joy. For me, I was Mock Turtle in Alice in Wonderland. That was my foray into performing.
You see, and you never forgot it. Yes, I was the fourth angel to the left.
Right, okay. But it is so true in what you say. And unfortunately, yeah, that joy we first initially have, and that joy that makes us want to pursue this thing does kind of get beaten down if you do end up in the wrong hand. I mean, I was very grateful that prior to coming across your work, and even the minds and the work that Scott's company does, of having a handful of very lovely teachers, but unfortunately, their voices often got drowned amongst the, I don't know, for want of better words, the bigger personalities, I suppose, that were still pushing a lot of those things of you know, you've got to remember this thing, and it's, you know, suddenly it's this cannibalizing of one's personal life, and I think it's also very dangerous too if you are, maybe you didn't have much like trauma or difficulty as a child, and then you think, oh my God, I'm not interesting, I wasn't abused, or, you know, and I think people then get really bothered that they can't be a good actor because they lived a charmed life, and I think that's scary too.
That was all being the thing that was going on in all those acting classes at that time. It was celebration of neuroses. And the more screwed up you were, the more, that's raw material. I mean, in fact, I used to have a joke that, you know, because we get desensitized remembering all these bad things that happened to us if you're a working actor. But listen, if you could be in a dysfunctional relationship, if you were living with an alcoholic who abused you, oh my God, you were the luckiest actor on earth, weren't you? You had endless material. And we celebrated these actors who had the most horribly screwed up lives. That we were made to think, oh, look at how interesting he is. Oh, yes, he's an alcoholic, but look. So I found all of that was absolutely nothing I wanted any part of. I wanted people to be healthy. I believe that actors should have wonderful lives. They should be happy. They should do lots of wonderful things. And that to be an actor is not to spend all of your life being miserable. So I thought, if I'm going to teach this stuff, I'm going to go back to school. And I got my master's in psychotherapy, clinical social work psychotherapy. And I worked in clinical settings. I worked as a therapist. And wow, it just became so clear to me. What is therapy and what is actor training? Two absolutely different things, my God. And that whenever anyone crosses that line, if you are ever in a workshop and and the brilliant teacher who's making everybody cry and look so marvelous says to you, Amy, let's talk about this scene and abandonment. That's what this character feels. Tell me about the times in your life when you have felt abandoned. That's the moment I want you to act. I want you to grab your mobile phone and go, oh, pardon me, I just got a text from my agent. Oh my God, I've got an audition. I've got to go right now. Bye.
Yeah. Touche.
Because it can only harm you. It can't make you a good actor. It can only make you crazy.
I was going to ask you too, is when you said you were working with your friend, when did you get to a point where you felt confident teaching this work to people? Like, how did you know, like, oh, this doesn't just work for Nikki, this is probably going to work for other people too?
I think it just sort of slowly started to happen. I was in a company, a rep company, where once we had the 3 plays up and running, we had free time. We'd been rehearsing during the day and putting out the first show went on at night. Then we rehearsed the second show. We had been intense rehearsal, and we knew each other quite well. And then suddenly had time because we were now in production.
Yeah.
And I had several people say to me, Nikki, tell me what you're doing. Please, what is it that you do?
Yeah.
That each night, there it is, and you cry on cue, you laugh on cue, you are so comfortable to work with on stage. What are you doing? And so it was my first real experiment with a group, but I think I had 6 or 7 of them. They were so generous. They let me experiment on them because I was finding my way. The thing that I love about teaching acting with passion is that ultimately it's easy. This work is so easy.
And that's the thing too. You keep using that word, and I wanted to come back to that. And we're also taught that it should be really hard. And then the fact that it is easy, like, wait a minute, this is a trick. This can't be what's going on here. So I love that.
Yeah, everything in our training for life, in education, and everything we do is work hard.
Exactly.
And so this must be the same. And then we read about these actors and what they go through in order to act. And I kind of think it takes us back to that first experience. When we didn't know anything, and it was just our intuition, our talent, our playfulness, our willingness to pretend, which we had been doing from the time we were little. And I said, all right, I'll be a wicked witch, or whatever. We did that when we were little. We acted, and no one ever worried about it. And in fact, actor training is very recent. It's only in the last 200 years that anyone ever got actor training.
Yeah.
People were born into, they were the children of set designers, costume designers, directors, actors. They were part of this company. They grew up with it, and no one taught them anything. They did all the jobs around the theater that were needed. You sweep the floor, you do that. And then as they got to be about age 9 or 10, someone said, okay, put on a costume and you be the little girl who presents the flowers. And then if you could learn lines, which is very important, you would get a speaking role. And what you did is you observed. And so they literally imitated. They imitated physically. That's what was so powerful.
Yeah.
Their bodies moved because no one told them differently. And they knew they had to speak loud enough to be heard. And so those kind of things, and they basically were never taught. They went purely on instinct and talent. And as they got older, of course, they they would work with it themselves, and maybe a good director would be helpful. But even directors for centuries, Shakespeare's plays had no director. It's someone actually being the traffic cop. Okay, he comes in from stage left, so be sure when you go to exit that you don't bump into him, okay? Because, all right, that was what direction was. And for Shakespeare's company, it was all about memorizing lines. You came to your first rehearsal with your lines learned, and the traffic patterns were set, and you went on stage. You had 4 half days of rehearsal. That was it for the greatest plays ever written. So this thing of actor training, it has become so overblown. Once actors understand the emotions that are in their bodies, not understand, but feel them, experience them. Once that connection is made, and it's the connection to the unconscious mind, which I'll go into a little, I'm passionate about neuroscience.
Oh, I know.
We are verbal animals.
Yeah.
We don't bark, we don't meow, we have words. And when you say the words, the emotions come up to join those words. And they are always full and accurate.
Just getting to that point, actually getting to the technique, because I guess it is, unless you sort of do it, it is kind of hard to explain it in a sense. But if you can give just a brief bit of insight to anyone who might be watching, who might be interested in learning your technique, either with you at one of your workshops, or should they be watching from Sydney or Melbourne or wherever, and training there, what's a basic way you would train the actor to kind of access all this? How does it work?
And just to piggyback on what you just said,
Sure.
There's Erica Chestnut in Australia.
Yes.
In London, there are several people who teach this.
Fabulous.
There is in Italy, a fabulous, in Rome, a gorgeous teacher. And in Paris, there are actually 3 gorgeous, wonderful teachers. Oh, in Vienna, I have a gorgeous teacher in Vienna, and a teacher in Brussels. I just remembered those. If people go onto my website and just contact, where it says contact, just say, I'm desperate for a teacher, I can probably find one for you that is a short journey, at least, to where you need to be.
Fabulous.
So how do we do this? Even to me, it's bizarre. And I've been doing this a long time because everything about the way the unconscious mind works and the brain works is truly quite so extraordinary. One of the things that I think has bedeviled artists, writers, philosophers, people for centuries is access to that. People talk about a writer or an artist will say, when I'm in the zone. And that's this approach to acting.
Okay.
That we want to get into whatever that zone is. And for me, it is access to the unconscious mind. Neuroscience is still, nobody has these answers in neuroscience. It's all very debatable. There's a whole group of neuroscientists who believe in brain scans and all of these things and technical things. And, they are and they say, we can on those brain scans, we can see where a person can see the color yellow. We can see where we see the color green, where we hear tap, tap, tap. We can pinpoint those, but we can't find the unconscious mind. And so these great thinkers say, well, then it doesn't exist. It's nothing but electrical impulses and chemical release and neurons and neurotransmitters, and that's all it is. There is another body of neuroscientists, the ones I believe in, who say, maybe we're looking in the wrong place. Maybe it isn't here. Maybe it's in the body. And what we know is that in the stomach, there are more neurons than in the brain. In the stomach, we produce more serotonin and dopamine, the two big chemicals of emotions and joy and everything, we produce those in our stomachs. We don't produce them in the brain. They're here. And then in the body, throughout the body, especially the immune system, we have these molecules of emotion called opiate receptors that are all about emotions. So maybe that's where we should look. And because this is not something we can see on a chart or a graph, it's sort of woo out there. It feels, well, but what about that? I mean, how do I get my hands around it? And the way we get our hands around it, when you say all those neurons in the stomach, when I was first starting out with this, when I was experimenting on myself and then on others, I kept thinking it felt like the emotions lived here in my body. It's like they were, and it felt like they were in a dungeon. And they were like an oppressed people, all these emotions in this big dungeon. And the prison guard was the voice in the head. And the prison guard had a big whip. And so I would read a script and it would say, oh, crying hysterically. And the prison guard would say, you need tears and they won't come. You'll see, wait and see. And then as soon as a few little tears would come out, the prison guard would say, no, get down there. And then the prison guard would say, all right, now, Nikki, push, make some, manufacture them, you can do it. And suddenly I was not a very good actor, doing all this pushing and whatever.
Yeah.
Just, it felt to me that it was all here. And therefore I call the unconscious mind the dungeon.
Yeah. Because in the book as well, you talk about it later.
And so my job in teaching, is to get past that prison guard that I call the intellect, because of acting teachers saying, stop intellectualizing.
Right.
Which just really makes me mad. I feel as though part of my job is to get past that intellect. And I urge people, if they use the book, which really takes you through this whole thing, and if I'm there, because there's even an audio link to my voice. And I know that people are finding that it works amazingly, just the book, because I get emails from people saying, I've never auditioned so well in my life. I can't believe it. So I urge you, if you say to yourself, if you're listening to this, and you go, I'm not anywhere near any of those cities where there's a teacher.
Yes, get the book. I'll tell everybody about the website at the end.
Yeah. So what I do is I ask people to move their bodies in not odd ways, but very natural ways that are part of the vocabulary of our movement. But in order to experience the various parts of the body that are really laden with feelings, in the chest, it's where we hold sadness, we hold loss, grief, disappointment. It's where our broken heart lives. And that when we touch this part of our body, something amazing happens. We feel things. The stomach, that's the youngest part of the body. Those are the youngest feelings. And they are directly connected to the ancient part of the brain, which is called the limbic system. Been reading about the limbic system, the amygdala. That part of the brain, through the course of evolution, has hardly changed. And in fact, our limbic system is very little different than the limbic system of any mammal. Our limbic system is about the same as a goat's, you know? That it is an ancient, primitive part of the brain, which is all about survival.
Yeah.
And so the feelings in the stomach fear. Fear. Most powerful emotion we
Yeah.
have. And we feel life and death there. How many times have you gone into an audition and you think, I'm going to die? I'm so scared. I feel like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And it's an audition for a commercial for loo paper or something. Come on. And yet we walk in and we think, I'm going to die, right?
Yeah.
And that's the limbic system going, danger, 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 because this is all about survival. And so this part of the body is very important. And when we touch that part, this whole digestive system, the solar plexus, all of that extraordinary sensitive parts of the body, we make contact with life and death fear. Our hands talked before we ever talked. When we were tiny infants, we were learning all kinds of words and things and all kinds of things before we could say a word. But the hands were actually talking. And by 4 months, the hands were out there going, hold me, don't leave me. And when you see brain scans, all very interesting, that the hands are connected to the verbal center of the brain. How amazing. Which is why poor actors, when they don't use their hands as they are taught in some drama schools, God, it's hard to remember your lines.
I'd like to now get into that, actually. So you're talking about, I think it's become affectionately termed flaxing, is when people access those parts of the body.
Yes.
And then there's text.
Yes, which is very important.
Yeah.
I am one of those rare teachers these days who believes in memorization. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
And when I mention the word and I look out into class and see people going, oh, and I think, this is very strange. It's like a pianist saying, oh, I love playing the piano, but I just don't like using my fingers. What do actors do? They speak memorized text.
Yeah.
Even if you write your own one-person show, there are lighting cues and music cues and all kinds of things. So you have to say the text.
Yes.
You have to memorize. Shakespeare's company memorized in the course of a year, played 150 plays.
Goodness me.
Their brains were memorizing machines. And what I learned from neuroscience is that the more we memorize, the better we get at it. I challenge every class I do, saying, I want you to memorize a new monologue every week.
Now, you talk a little bit more about a technique that you have to do that, or what you believe is the best way to do that. Can you give some suggestions?
It's always about the body. If we are anxious, we say, oh, I'm so terrible at memorizing. Oh, I hate it. We are setting off the limbic system. Anytime the limbic system senses that we are not safe and in equilibrium, it immediately interprets that as danger. And when we go, oh, I'm going to memorize this, I got an audition tomorrow. Oh, the limbic system goes, oh my God, we're in danger. And the minute the limbic system senses danger, it then starts to operate as if you were under attack. And it means that the part of the brain that memorizes the neurotransmitters and the glucose and all that, it says, we don't need that. We're in danger. We're being threatened. I mean, it'd be stupid if a tiger attacked you to start memorizing Hamlet. I mean, that'd be dumb. So it says, okay, we shut that off. And what we do is we give the power to fight or run. And so we have glucose and we have neurotransmitters and we have everything to make us powerful so we can beat this danger. Well, that doesn't help us to memorize. It just makes our heart pound and it makes us feel hysterical. And what I discovered, again, neuroscience research,
it's
so
fascinating.
wonderful.
Fascinating.
So wonderful is that they found that when people used their bodies in ways that were natural and comfortable, that the brain then gave the neurotransmitters and the glucose and all of that to the memorizing part of the brain, because the limbic system said, hey, we must be okay because, look, she's moving around. And so what I recommend is that people do ordinary stuff. Laundry. I mean, I can't tell you, doing laundry is the best gift for memorizing you could ever have. Because you've got, heavy, wet sheets to get out of the washing machine and into the dryer while you're saying, you got your script there. All right, to be or not to be? That is the question. And it means that you won't act. You won't fall in love with the text. You will just be learning lines, which is your job, is just learning words and printing them into your visual cortex. And you want to do it out loud. And the more active you are, clean your apartment, fix dinner, all of those things are wonderful opportunities. And you can't say, I don't have time. I don't have time to memorize.
Yes.
Why do you have time? Well, lots of time. And then what happens is you become good at it. And it starts being fun. It's wonderful. And your agent sends you a text saying, tomorrow, I want you to put on camera this speech. And if you are one of those, you go, I can't do it. No. You say, okay, while I'm fixing dinner, I'll memorize that. What a piece of cake. Oh, that's great.
There you are, everybody. No excuses anymore. Nikki's just told you the secret. You can't hide anymore.
Most actor training now and directors are obsessed with text being about analysis.
Yeah.
Which I think is one of the most damaging things that can happen, because it means that you've got your intellect guiding the show. All that table work, where we talk about motivations and all of these things, aren't we supposed to discover that in rehearsal?
Yeah.
We are learning about our characters, and intuitively, I always knew there was something wrong with that before I even learned this stuff. Was what used to drive me crazy was we'd be in table work and someone would start talking about my character. Oh yes, that reminds me of an experience that I had. I really understand that. Oh, Amy, I understand what she did. I'm thinking, how dare you? How dare you talk about my character?
I think it's a trap we can often fall into, but I know in recent years I've sort of gone, well, you know what? I've got my own character to worry about. So who am I to be telling you how your character should be when that's about you?
And it's so nutty even to talk about your own character. You discover it.
I'm just curious because, a lot of what you're saying in teaching does fly in the face of I suppose, popular ways of working. Have you encountered any resistance from your contemporaries, about the way that you work with students, and how have you dealt with that? Like, what's kept you on your path to keep teaching this way?
What's kept me on my path is that I see actors being set free and happy. And yes, every now and then I'll get someone in a class who, if this is so different, and I always say, just give it time. Experience it. Don't try to figure it out. Yes, this is unlike what you've been trained to do, and see what happens. I did have an interesting experience when the book first came out. An actor I'd worked with a great deal here in New York said to me, oh, there's an actor I know who just needs this so badly. He's in his 50s and he works a lot. He's very successful, and he has actually taught at a university for a while. But this is exactly what he needs. And she said, I'm going to give him a copy of your book. And she said he read the first chapter and he threw the book across the room and said, this is garbage. And he called her up and he said, I've never read such a blah, 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 and this is, it's so bad. And she was very upset. And I said, don't be upset. I said, it must be very frightening to him. At this point in his career, and he has been successful, to read this and think, oh my God, you mean there are things that I could have done differently and maybe I'd be even better. I think that's pretty scary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. However, it's crazy. I mean, I worked with an actor who had been at the RSC, Royal Shakespeare Company in London, in England for years. He came to me when he was 76.
Goodness.
He had been an actor for 50 years, and someone sent him to me. And he said, oh, this is the most delicious, wonderful thing. I wish I'd had it years ago, but it's such fun now. And he did Shakespeare for me all the time. And he came to class several times, did it again and again. So it just depends upon the person. But yes, pushback. And there are acting teachers who think I'm insane. Absolutely.
I guess the results then obviously speak for themselves, don't they?
Yep.
Nikki, this has been so utterly delightful. If anyone would like to find Nikki's fabulous book, which gives more details about what we've talked about today, Acting with Passion, can be found on nikiflacks.com, Amazon, and many other good bookstores. You can also go to nikiflacks.com if you want to find out about any upcoming workshops that you could do with Nikki, or you can send her an email to find out any practitioners who are also doing her work in different parts of the world. How was that? Did that sound accurate?
That sounds accurate, absolutely. And I've even had people read the book and then send me questions.
Amazing.
So I tried such and such. Is this supposed to happen, or should I try that? And and I learn from everybody.
Excellent. Well, Nikki, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching this. And if you'd like to see more videos in this series, please remember to subscribe to Why This.